The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 411. Kiran and Snow looked at Serena expectantly. She did grow up in the Mawi Tribe, after all, so she must know more about black magic and spells. Perhaps she really did have a solution. Seeing their serious faces, Serena burst out laughing. You just leave it to fate. I'm going to kill you. Kiran lifted his hand to hit her when he realized she was messing with him. Serena dodged it quickly, but her hands swept across the top of Kiran's pants. Suddenly, there was a cold breeze on his buttocks as the top of his pants fell downward. Instead of taking advantage of him, she handed the medicine bottle to Snow and said, "He's your husband, so you're responsible for him." She ran out before Snow could say yes. When Snow saw the scars on the other parts of his body, it felt like countless stabs to her heart. She was heartbroken by the sight of it, and tears welled up in her eyes. Just as she was about to apply the medicine, Kiran's hand slammed on the bed. "Serena, that's a great idea." Snow was startled. "What do you mean? It doesn't matter what their motive is, since it's irreversible anyway. Instead of wasting our efforts, we should let nature take its course, and we'll lure them out." "Will you be in danger?" Snow asked. "Lilian will not harm me, but I don't know about Yvonne. What about Power Hub or Imperial Dragon? Will they harm you?" "Forget about them. I'll kill them if I want to. Since my life is not under my control, what's there to be afraid about?" "Can you do it?" Snow asked him with concern. Kiran was completely calm now, returning to his usual confident self, but he still could not help but curse. "Damn it! What is it?" Snow froze. "If I die, Lilian and Yvonne would die too. It seems like I have two more assistants." Kiran got even more excited. Snow was shocked to hear that, but she was over the moon as well. "I guess so. Perfect. It's simply perfect." After saying that, he excitedly patted his hands on the bed. Seeing Kiran relaxed and happy made Snow feel relaxed and happy as well. Then she continued treating his wounds. After she was done, she could not help but laugh at the fingerprints on Kiran's butt. Kiran could not see it, so he turned to ask, "Why are you laughing? Does Lilian think of you as her child?" "What do you mean? How could she spank you with her hands?" Snow said while stroking his butt. "That perverted woman will never get married," Kiran cursed. "Piffed!" Snow smiled sweetly and caressed Kiran's face. "She can't get married because you don't want to marry her." "I don't care about them. I just want you." After saying that, Kiran felt glum suddenly. "I don't know when I'll be able to solve this. It's okay. I'll wait." Snow gently touched his face. Kiran's heart was filled with gratitude. "Let's give our all to the company starting from tomorrow. Everything today is a blessing in disguise." "What do you mean?" "Lilian and Yvonne wouldn't want to die, so they wouldn't attack me for the time being. Since Yvonne is the second daughter of the Ludwig family, Power Hub can't do anything to me either. Otherwise, Yvonne would be put in danger." "You're right. Our biggest enemy right now is Imperial Dragon. It just so happened that they're my target as well, so we're at an advantage. Can you fight them in your current condition?" Snow looked at his body. "Give me 2 days. Lilian, that damned woman." Kiran clenched his fists. "I think that she's trying to help you. Maybe you're misunderstanding her." "I don't care. I'm just fed up with her," Kiran said coldly. "Focus on getting well soon," Snow advised softly. Kiran nodded. He could not go home in this condition, so he just stayed at the company. Not only did Snow ask Onyx to buy Kiran a change of clothes, but she also asked him to pause the development of Dragon's Mount according to Kiran's instructions. At Bayville Hotel, Lindsay stood by the window of her room with a phone in her hand while the other person spoke, sounding over the moon. "You found your sister? The crystal pendant she wore looks like the one my sister had. I've already taken some of her hair to do a DNA test," said Lindsay. "All right. Make sure that it's verified," said the other person. "Dad, there's a problem," Lindsay hesitated before saying. "What is it?" Lindsay's father, Finn Ludwig, asked. "My sister seems to be under some kind of love spell with Kiran. I don't think they can be separated." Lindsay frowned. "Oh, I know about that. How are we going to get rid of Kiran?" Lindsay was surprised to hear how calm her father was. "I haven't thought about that yet. Do you have any idea?" "Not yet, but I plan to do some investments in Bayville so I can observe him and find opportunities to kill him," said Lindsay. "All right. Let me know if you need more money." After that, Finn hung up. Lindsay listened to the beeping in the phone in confusion. She was puzzled as to what her father meant by that. Why did he sound different from usual? Instead of dwelling on it, her mind was occupied by thoughts of Kiran. She had fallen in love with him, but because of his relationship with her sister, what was she going to do? She was in a dilemma, especially at the thought of the video of her on his phone. What if the video got leaked? Would she die of embarrassment if that happened? She still did not know that the video was gone after Kiran smashed his phone in anger. She huddled on the couch in distress. There was a look of sorrow in her eyes after realizing that she could not have Kiran. In Yvonne's room, Serena was standing by the window while Yvonne was on the hospital bed. They had been arguing for a while, but they still could not come up with a solution. "Are you going to let Kiran carry this poison for the rest of his life?" Serena looked at Yvonne and asked. Yvonne did not answer immediately. After a while, she looked at Serena and said, "Your love for Kiran has nothing to do with me. Snow and Kiran are still husband and wife." "I didn't think that you would be such a selfish woman," Serena said coldly. "You're wrong. I'm a miserable woman." Yvonne looked bitter. Chapter 412. Miserable woman? Serena was curious. Yvonne nodded. "As someone from the Mawi Tribe, even if you didn't practice black magic, you should know that there are two types of dual female love spells, right? The love spell and the fate spell. Is yours the fate spell?" Serena was shocked. Yvonne nodded gloomily. "Yes. I'm under the fate spell, which means that I'm able to trade my life with Lilian and Kiran to save theirs." Serena was stunned. She knew exactly what she was talking about. Love spells and fate spells were supposed to be combined. However, in the dual female love spell, one of the women would be under the fate spell, and the other would be under the love spell. The woman under the fate spell would be able to control their destiny, while the other would be able to read the male's emotions. To put it simply, the love spell was split into fate and love. The clever reason behind this phenomenon is that in the face of danger, the woman under the fate spell would be able to sacrifice her life to protect the other two. Of course, it would require that woman to wholly accept the other two being together. Otherwise, she could still make the selfish decision to save herself. She was a double-edged sword and the controller of destiny. She did not expect Yvonne to actually be under the fate spell. In other words, Yvonne could single-handedly determine the fate of Kiran and Lilian. "Will you sacrifice yourself for them?" Serena looked at Yvonne and asked. "What do you think?" Yvonne retorted. Serena was uncertain. She stared at Yvonne's calm expression and fell silent. "Serena, I know you like Kiran too. I don't know why us foolish women would fall in love with that man." "Sigh," Yvonne sighed. "Too bad that man is in love. He only has Snow in his heart. Snow is very happy. Even if I can't be Kiran's woman, I will silently love him for the rest of my life," said Serena. Yvonne's gaze swept over Serena's body. "If possible, I will find a way to let you be together with Kiran so you can conceive his child." Serena was stunned. "Do you have a way?" "I'm not sure, but I'm still studying it," said Yvonne. "That's great. You must make it work," Serena said excitedly. She was genuinely excited, not for herself, but for Snow. She could not bear to see her best friend be in love with Kiran, but unable to conceive his child. Even if it was just once, Snow and Kiran would be able to live without any regrets. She decided that if there was such an opportunity, she would give it to Snow. Yvonne glanced at Serena's face. Although she did not know what she was thinking, she smiled when she saw how happy she was. "Serena, did your master say anything before she died?" "She just asked me to protect the Xander family and have a child with Kiran." "Nothing else," Serena said truthfully. "Sigh, your master has made you suffer too. Don't worry, I'll make sure you have Kiran's child," Yvonne assured her. "Thank you." Serena was sincerely grateful. "I want to rest for a bit," Yvonne said weakly, so Serena left her room. After the door closed, a smirk appeared on Yvonne's face. "Kiran belongs to me and me only. No one can take him away from me, not even Lilian." If Serena saw Yvonne's face, she would be shocked. She would not believe that she was the same gentle woman from earlier. Yvonne put her hand on her stomach and rubbed it gently. Suddenly, it started radiating heat, and the butterflies on her stomach shone beautifully like flowers in full bloom. Yvonne looked at the beautiful butterfly and said, "Kiran, I want to be your one and only. Don't hate me. I'm doing this because I truly love you." Meanwhile, Kiran was lying on the bed with Snow when a force called out to him. He found himself subconsciously thinking of Yvonne, even when his arms were around Snow. Yvonne bit his tongue hard to calm himself down. On the other hand, pain flashed across Yvonne's face. "Kiran, I'm your wife," Yvonne said furiously while enduring the pain. Inside Neptune's Cove karaoke. When Simon brought his men inside, the bustling place immediately quieted down as many people turned to look at them warily. When Lauren saw Simon walking over, she said, "Hello, slap." Without a word, Simon slapped her. A bright red handprint instantly appeared on Lauren's face, and blood spilled from the corners of her mouth. Her eyes burst into flames as she stared at Simon, but she still restrained herself from attacking him. Everyone fell silent when they saw that. The people who came here to have a good time had their eyes on the beautiful Lauren. They went up to her but had never succeeded in wooing her. Instead, they got beaten up, so many of them feared Lauren. They did not expect Simon to hit Lauren as soon as he came in, which made them fear him even more. "Everyone, get out," Simon roared. Thud, thud, many fell out of fear. Tables were knocked over, and wine bottles fell to the ground. Everyone was crawling out of the place in fear. Instantly, the entire place was quiet. "Simon, what are you doing? Are you here to cause trouble, or are you here to get yourself injured?" Lilian asked as she walked down the stairs. Everyone gaped at her when they saw her face. Lilian's oval-shaped face was beautiful and enchanting. Her almond-shaped eyes looked like pools of water. Her skin was as white as snow, and her features were like a beautiful painting. She was stunningly gorgeous. She was like a bright pearl and a shining crystal, but there were traces of anger on her face. She was exuding a deadly aura. Every single one of Simon's men was stunned. When Simon saw her, he could not hide his surprise, too. He did not expect her to be so beautiful. Give her a bit more time, and she might actually surpass Zara. Simon tried to suppress the lust rising in him. He could not afford to offend this woman, let alone want her. Back then, Zara drove countless masters of Imperial Dragon crazy. They would even fight each other because of her, and that resulted in a civil war. Lilian must be the next Zara. If he wanted to survive, he must be able to control himself. "Ms. Yanez, why did you help Kiran?" Simon looked at Lilian and asked. Chapter 413. "Simon, my affairs are none of your business." Lilian's voice was cold with a hint of frustration. Simon was livid. He widened his eyes and looked at her. "Ms. Yanez, aren't you going to show me some respect?" "Respect?" Lilian sneered and pointed to Lauren. "Did you show her respect? Did her face swell up on its own?" Simon's anger rose after her questions, but he still said calmly, "Miss Yanez, please calm down. Let's not waste our energy on self-destructive internal conflict." "Internal conflict?" Lilian repeated. She suddenly appeared in front of Simon like a ghost. Slap, slap. 2 crisp slaps rang in Simon's ears. Fuffed. The 2 men next to Simon suddenly spurted out mouthfuls of blood and even teeth. "Lilian, how dare you hit my people?" Simon was furious. "Isn't Lauren my people too?" Lilian scoffed. "You. Anyone who lays a finger on my people will suffer twice as much." Lilian glanced around her. Anyone who dared mess with her would have to pay. Even if it were the king, she would not back down. Lilian was like a mother hen protecting her chicks. The metaphor may not sound like much, but her intimidating and determined demeanor was terrifying. The other women in Foxgate were touched and overjoyed by her words as they instilled a newfound courage in them. Simon was infuriated. "Lilian, don't forget where you came from. Panthergate is not afraid of Foxgate. The Foxgate may be weak to you, but don't forget that I can easily knock you wimps down." Lilian was equally as intimidating and tough. She was not afraid to fight him. "You..." Not only was Simon angry, but he was shocked by her attitude. Lilian was not lying. Panthergate as a whole was indeed stronger than Foxgate, but Simon was not as powerful as Lilian. Simon was different from the others. He was a drunkard and a womanizer. How would he have time to improve his skills? However, he was able to become the leader of Panthergate because of his adaptability and cruel methods. As for Foxgate, their leader may be strong, but the women were relatively weak. That was because their main job was to spy and gather information. Some women might even have to sell their bodies in exchange for information, so not every one of them knew how to fight. Many of them, even the young ones, were only good at spying. "Simon, if you want to fight us, you better think carefully. When the leader asks us about our duel, the blame is on you. I have nothing to do with this." Lilian glared at Simon and warned him. Simon was in a bad mood now. He stared at Lilian fiercely for half a minute before snorting. "Lilian, I'll put this behind us for now, but I must tell you that Panthergate is not to be messed with. If you push me to my limits, you'll be sorry." "How are you going to make me sorry? Are you going to force me like how you forced my master back then?" Lilian looked at him with a piercing gaze. Simon's face was flushed red, but it turned pale when he was asked that. He was merely a bystander in that incident, so he dared not take credit for that. Finally, he said coldly, "I wasn't the one who forced your master. Why don't you go find the people who did it?" "You are an accomplice," Lilian taunted. "Watch your mouth." Although Simon wanted to put up a strong front, he was sounding weaker now. "I don't want to waste my time on you. Leave." Lilian looked enraged as she shooed him away. "Humph." Simon snorted, angry that his men were beaten up. "Simon, let me tell you something," Lilian said suddenly. "What is it?" Simon's interest was piqued. "Kiran wants to kill you, so look out for yourself," Lilian warned him with a mocking expression. "Kiran, he... If you're not afraid of dying, don't leave Bayville," Lilian interrupted him and walked away. Simon regretted not killing Kiran today. He angrily shouted to his men, "Let's go." He turned around and left with his men. "What about the business we lost tonight?" Lilian said suddenly. "Give Miss Yane $1 million, Simon ordered through gritted teeth. Someone immediately wrote $1 million check. After Simon signed it, his men handed it to Lauren, and Lauren took it. Simon snorted and left. He was humiliated by Lilian. When his men were slapped just now, he wanted to stand up for them, but after sensing her aura, he could tell he was no match for her. It was too big of a humiliation. After Simon left, he dared not stay in Bayville any longer, so he left Bayville too. As for killing Kiran, he decided that he could not do it himself, so he reported it to his superiors instead. Unlike others, Simon was more concerned about his dignity. He knew that even if he managed to kill Kiran, he would never get promoted because his skills were just not up to standard. In the end, what Imperial Dragon valued the most was skill, and because of that, Simon would much rather save his life. In Lilian's room, Lauren put the check on the table. "Master, what are we going to do? Those useless shits from Panthergate are not as brutal as Wolfgate, so don't worry. They've probably decided to retreat already. I'm just worried about who's coming next." "Could it be Liongate?" Lauren asked. Lilian shook her head. "This isn't a video game where you fight different monsters every time you level up. Imperial Dragon isn't that stupid. The destruction of Wolfgate already served as a wake-up call for them, and Panthergate's retreat was a reminder. I reckon that they would send experts next." "What about Kiran?" Lauren asked Lilian. "I'd rather he be dead." Lilian blurted angrily as Kiran was always giving her a hard time. Lauren winced, knowing that Lilian was angry at Kiran, so she dared not say anything else. "Excuse me. Take care of the $1 million, said Lilian. "Thank you, Ms. Giannis," Lauren said, leaving with the check. Meanwhile, Lilian glanced out the window. "Kiran, a new, stronger enemy is coming, and this time, it's the one I've been hoping for." After a moment of silence, she continued, "You must put away your ego or else." Before she finished, her eyes were already full of panic. Meanwhile, the headquarters of Imperial Dragon had already received the news. Maxwell Starr, a tall and burly man, volunteered to kill Kiran. His request was granted, and he immediately made his way to Bayville. Chapter 414. Every woman was different. Each woman had their own characteristics. Right now, Lilian was like a housewife. Although she was extremely dissatisfied with Kiran, she still thought of herself as the daughter-in-law of the York family. She thought that everything about the York family had to do with her. Therefore, she often thought about Kiran. However, Kiran only had eyes for Snow. Others may see her as a cold CEO, but to him, she was his lovely wife. At that moment, half of his weight was on Snow's body. He was sleeping like a pig and drooling. He was unable to do anything anyway. The next morning, Kiran felt the pain subside quite a bit. When he woke up, Snow had not woken up yet. Kiran was a little embarrassed when he saw his sleeping position, so he scratched his nose awkwardly. After that, he quietly got up and left Snow's office. When he got downstairs, he saw Frank practicing martial arts alone. Frank was not surprised to see Kiran, as he knew he did not leave yesterday. He went up to him and said, "Good day, Mr. Kiran." "I'm not having a good day. I got beaten up." Kiran did not hide it from Frank. Frank stared at him in shock. He did not expect him to be so direct. Kiran took his clothes off, and Frank stared at the wounds in surprise. "Mr. Kiran, are you a victim of domestic abuse?" Kiran glared at him. "How could you say that?" Frank suppressed a laugh and nodded. "You're right. My bad." Kiran brushed it off and said, "The Golden Dragon died to save my life last night. The Golden Dragon is dead." Frank gaped at him with sadness in his eyes. Kiran nodded. "It died outside of the York family's abandoned buildings on Dragon's Mount. Sass, should I go take a look?" Frank was choking back tears. "It's Yvonne's poisonous snake," Kiran said again. "What about Yvonne?" Frank stared at him blankly, thinking she was in danger. "She's fine," Kiran said. "I'm sure it was thanks to your skills," Frank said. He thought that Kiran saved her with his medical skills. Bullshit. He only regained his strength by kissing Yvonne. However, it was also his genius idea to kiss her to save his life. "Go take care of it and see me when you return," Kiran said calmly. "Yes, Mr. Kiran." Frank immediately left. Kiran went to check on Onyx and the others. After training with the pills, everyone had improved a lot. If they were up against the men of Panthergate, they would definitely be able to resist their attacks and maybe even kill them. Kiran felt much more at ease. Onyx walked over and said, "Mr. Kiran, how are things?" Kiran sighed. "The York family's problems are getting so confusing. I'm just so annoyed and lost." Onyx watched his pained expression sympathetically. Suddenly, he thought of something. "Mr. Kiran, back then when I left the master's home, he told me something." "What is it?" Kiran asked. Mountains aren't mountains, and water isn't water. Both mountains and water are but a dream, Onyx said to Kiran. Mountains aren't mountains, and water isn't water. Both mountains and water are but a dream. Kiran repeated while frowning thoughtfully. Mr. Kiran, you should know that I'm uneducated, so I don't understand, Onyx said. Kiran did not reply as he was still thinking about that phrase. Mr. Kiran, have you ever wondered? Onyx said. Wondered about what? Kiran was taken aback. The master sensed that Kiran's family was in danger at the time, so he probably asked me to work for the three families as an undercover spy so he could prepare to fight back. Kiran nodded. That's true. However, the master did not do that, which also means that I was useless. Have you ever thought about why the master asked me to hide among the three families? Onyx asked. Are you saying that it's because he wanted you to remember these words? Kiran calmed himself down. I've been thinking about it since you returned. I'm not as smart as Zachary, so I wouldn't know what those words mean. I guess that's why he told me, Onyx said with a hint of self-deprecation. He was silent for a moment before he continued. Based on what I know about the master, he must have his plans. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told me that. Kiran's gaze grew deeper. If mountains were not mountains, did that mean that Dragon's Mount was not a mountain? There was water under Dragon's Mount, but it was unknown where that river led. The last part was even more obscure. Was he saying that Dragon's Mount was just a dream? Dream. Kiran's heart skipped a beat. People thought that they could only dream when they had thoughts, aspirations, or desires. Was Dragon's Mount just a puzzle meant to test humanity? Did his father tell him this because he cracked the code himself? Onyx looked at Kiran in surprise. Mr. Kiran, are you all right? Kiran shook his head. I'm fine. I was just thinking about these words. If you can't figure it out now, don't dwell on it. To rebuild the York family, we need money and revenge. Why not just enjoy the satisfaction of vengeance? Onyx showed off how brutal he was. Kiran nodded. You're right. Onyx looked at his men training. I have them train every day and build their loyalty to the York family. This will be the key to rebuilding the York family. Kiran looked at Onyx and said, Thank you. Onyx shook his head and said excitedly, Mr. Kiran, there's a favor I'd like to ask from you. What is it? Tell me. Thud. Onyx kneeled in front of Kiran in front of everyone. What are you doing? Kiran quickly bent down to help him up. Onyx stopped him and said, Mr. Kiran! I hope that when you bury the York family, you will bury the family bodyguards with them so they can protect the York family forever. Thump. Tears streamed down his face as Onyx said that and kowtowed to Kiran. Kiran felt a stab to the heart. He quickly helped Onyx up with a grave look on his face. You can rest assured. Thank you, Mr. Kiran, Onyx said gratefully. Kiran looked at Onyx's men, who were looking at them. Instantly, he was filled with pride. All of you are part of the York family. Everyone was taken aback, but their faces looked ecstatic. We're the York family, Onyx got up and shouted. We're the York family, the others chanted along. The employees who had just returned to the company froze on the spot when they heard the shout. In the next second, they also shouted, We're the York family. The employees were touched by their shouting, so they shouted too. Snow was walking out of the building when she heard that and burst into tears. Suddenly, she ran over to grab Kiran's hand while blushing. Honey, let's go! Kiran was stunned, not knowing what she was up to. Snow looked at the employees and said, Go back to work. The employees nodded in shock. I'm going to give Kiran a child, Snow shouted to everyone. Chapter 415. Kiran was shocked. He did not expect Snow to say that in public, nor did he expect her to accept that the child would not have his surname. Snow loved him wholeheartedly. When a man loves a woman, he should make her happy. For Snow's sacrifice, Kiran would have to make her even more happy. Kiran hugged her right away and kissed her. Snow put her arms around his neck and closed her eyes, responding to his kiss passionately. She loved Kiran so much that she was willing to give everything up to be his lover. When Kiran let her go, Snow's face was as red as a tomato, but she was filled with joy. Everyone was shocked by their open display of love, including Onyx and the employees. I will decide my own fate. Kiran suddenly raised his voice and spoke. Everyone was puzzled as to what he meant. Snow was trembling, knowing that Kiran wanted to get rid of the love spell. Wait for me. Kiran caressed Snow's cheek. After their brief interlude, he left. Kiran, what about the child? When an employee saw him leaving alone, they immediately shouted. I will. When the time comes, Miss Snow will give birth to sons, daughters, and more. Kiran shouted without looking back. Snow did not object. On the contrary, her eyes were brimming with tears from the overwhelming emotions. The employees started to feel envious of their happiness. Kiran left the company to go to the Quinn's house. The three families were nothing to Kiran now. He was just waiting to end them once he buried the York family. Now, he realized that each family had their own secret. Yvonne's identity made him even more curious about the Quinn family. Meanwhile, at the Quinn's house, although Henry was not a young man, he looked like one being all humble in front of the tall and burly figure whose eyes were like that of an ox. The man was Maxwell. He came from Imperial Dragon to Bayville to kill Kiran, but he came to the Quinn family's house first before taking action. On the surface, it seemed like the Zeiglers were the ones taking the lead among the three families since they had direct contact with Wolfgate. However, Henry and Theodore were not just props. They had their own backers, too. Maxwell was Henry's backer. He was the one who returned Yvonne to them over 10 years ago. If not for him, Yvonne would have never returned to the Quinn family. When Maxwell came, Henry happily welcomed him. Maxwell drank tea while looking at the humble Henry. "Sit down and talk. It's okay. If you need anything, feel free to ask." Henry dared not sit down. He was acting like the guest instead of the host. "I heard that Kiran had been acting out of line in Bayville, and he had reached the point where he fears nothing," Maxwell said coldly. Henry did not reply immediately. Maxwell widened his eyes and stared at him with a murderous gaze. "Why aren't you saying anything? Mr. Maxwell, why did you get involved in this matter?" Henry lowered his head and asked cautiously. "Why?" Maxwell snorted in displeasure. "It's because I want to kill Kiran." Henry leaned over and whispered, "Why are you fighting him? That young man is arrogant and ruthless. It's best to just roll with the punches." He was silent for a moment before he continued, "There are many people in Imperial Dragon. Someone else can kill him if they want to. The Zeigler and the Marsh family will attack too." Maxwell's face turned gloomy. "Henry, what have you become? Have you become so used to your comfortable life that you lost your fighting spirit?" Henry turned pale with fright and quickly shook his head. No, I'm just telling the truth. I just feel like there are some hidden forces at play in Bayville. I might be staying away from Kiran now, but I'm willing to sacrifice myself to save the Quinn family." Maxwell scoffed. "Coward. Slap." Enraged, Maxwell slapped Henry. Bam! Henry flew several meters away, his mouth bloodied with a few missing teeth. He looked miserable. Henry fell to the ground and screamed, but there was a hint of joy behind his eyes. He immediately got up and plopped down onto his knees in front of Maxwell. "Mr. Maxwell, you must think carefully. Kiran is really powerful. There's no need for you to take the risk and put your life in danger." "Coward! I came to Bayville to kill Kiran." Maxwell was furious. Henry kneeled on the ground, looking extremely nervous. "Kill me? Bring it on, then." At that moment, Kiran walked in and spoke arrogantly. He had heard everything. "Kiran!" Henry exclaimed. Maxwell's gaze fell upon Kiran like lightning bolts. He looked at the young man up and down. He was a handsome man in his 20s, but his face looked cold and ruthless. "Are you the arrogant Kiran who has a death wish?" "I admit that I'm quite arrogant, but I don't agree that I have a death wish." "Who would want to die? Are you mad?" Kiran teased with a mocking gaze. "I'll make sure you die." As soon as Maxwell said that, he jumped up like an ape and attacked Kiran with both fists. Henry, who was kneeling on the ground, flew several meters as if a strong gust of wind blew him away. Bam! Kiran and Maxwell's fists collided, but none of them moved. Seeing as Kiran was unaffected, Maxwell did not stop there. He engaged his core, spun his body in the air, and kicked Kiran's chest with both feet. Kiran tilted his body slightly to avoid his attack while he slashed his right hand at Maxwell's ankle. Maxwell managed to dodge him and land on the ground nimbly. He stood firm and sneered at Kiran. "You know your stuff. Killing you is easy," Kiran responded coldly. "Easy? Ha-ha!" Maxwell tilted his back and laughed heartily. "You're overestimating yourself. Do you think that you're invincible after you killed those wolf cubs from Imperial Dragon? Kiran, I'm warning you, they were nothing to us. They were just the house dogs." Maxwell straightened his back and said to Kiran indifferently, "For us, killing you would be simple and easy." "Oh yeah? Simple and easy, how?" Kiran sneered. "Like this." Maxwell lifted his hands and threw some powder at Kiran. Kiran was shocked and filled with rage. "You know black magic?" Chapter 416. Black magic. To Kiran, that was the thing he was most sensitive to right now. He felt like he was being manipulated, but he did not know who was doing it, nor did he know what his fate was. The only thing he knew was how evil that person's intentions were. The manipulator must know black magic, or at least have access to people who did. Seeing Maxwell using black magic made him burn with hatred, even if he had nothing to do with the manipulator. "It's too late. Your time has come to an end." With the power of his black magic, Maxwell shouted while attacking Kiran even faster. The poisonous powder filled the air, and like magic, it turned into countless venomous creatures. Centipedes, scorpions, and venomous snakes. Henry, who was pretending to be dead, immediately got up after seeing the venomous creatures. He cursed out of fright and ran faster than a teenage boy. Maxwell stared at Kiran, ready to see him get killed. However, Kiran did not avoid the creatures. Instead, he rushed at Maxwell. Maxwell froze at the sight of that. "Kiran, are you not afraid of black magic?" Little did he know, he had just exposed himself with his words. The moment Kiran saw him using black magic, he thought that he was the mastermind behind this. However, he clearly did not know that Kiran had the love spell on him, which meant that it was not him. Then, bang. Kiran's fist hit Maxwell's chest. "Twee!" Maxwell spurted out a mouthful of blood, and he backed away quickly. He looked at Kiran with a pale face as he gripped his chest. Blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth while he said, "Why aren't you afraid of black magic?" Kiran was just showing him mercy earlier, or else Maxwell would have become a corpse by now. He stared at Maxwell and said, "I'd like to know about the Mawi Tribe's black magic." Maxwell spat out more blood and said angrily, "What makes you think I'll tell you? Who the fuck do you think you are?" Saying that, he took out a handful of powder and swallowed it. Then he applied some on his chest. Immediately, the creatures crawled on his body, and his wounds healed visibly as he watched. Kiran was quite surprised. "You know your stuff, too." "Humph. What do you know, kid? I'm telling you. My powers are not as simple as you think. I could kill you easily." Maxwell regained his confidence after healing his wounds. Meanwhile, the creatures crawling all over the living room and Maxwell's body would give people goosebumps just by looking at them. Anyone else would have probably fainted if they were in Kiran's position, but he was calm. He took a deep breath and sniffed the stench in the air, but instead of feeling nauseous, he felt restless. Was the love spell in him somehow attracted to the black magic in the air? Kiran froze. He stared at Maxwell and said, "How about I spare your life?" Maxwell sneered, "Spare my life? Ha ha. You really are daydreaming, are you? I should be the one." "Killing you!" "You can choose to take the chance or not, but I'm only asking once," Kiran warned him coldly. "What chance?" Maxwell asked curiously. "Do you know who the Mawi Saintess is?" Kiran pretended not to know. "The last Mawi Saintess was Fiona Sinfield, but she's dead," Maxwell said coldly. "Who's Fiona Sinfield?" Kiran pretended not to know. "She was a bitch who fell in love with your father, Titus York," Maxwell said angrily. "Fell in love with my father?" Kiran was stupefied. "That's right, she fell in love with your father." When Maxwell spoke, his tone sounded murderous, as if he was trying to put that memory behind him. "Are you in love with Fiona?" Kiran asked, staring at him. "Yes, she was the indestructible saintess of the Mawi tribe, but she gave her heart to your father. Although she did not become your father's woman, she still gave her soul to him." Maxwell's eyes were full of deep sorrow. It seemed like the memory was so painful that it was impossible to forget. Kiran was shocked. If what he said was true, did that mean that the people of Mawi tribe hated his father? If that were the case, that would explain why he, Lilian, and Yvonne were under the dual female love spell. Kiran understood everything now, but he still feigned ignorance. "That's not possible. My father loves my mother till death. How could he be in love with Fiona?" "You're making it up." "Shut up! What do you know?" Maxwell growled. "I may not know much at the time because I was still a kid, but I do know that I despised all of you," Kiran sneered. "You..." Maxwell was breathing heavily in anger. "It's all because we were deceived by your mother, Zara." "Deceived?" Kiran was ecstatic while he continued to pretend he did not know anything. "We were all deceived by your mother. She was pretending to be two people at the same time. She was both the Zara who seduced your father and your mother who was always by his side. We didn't even know she gave birth to you." Maxwell gritted his teeth in hatred while recounting the story of being tricked like a monkey at a petting zoo. Kiran was pleased that he was getting more information. "My parents' relationship has nothing to do with you people. Why are you so mad about it?" "You're a sick man." "Shut up!" Maxwell did not want him to interrupt. Talking about his past felt like reopening old wounds to him. "Who do you think you are to make me shut up?" Kiran continued the act and ridiculed him. I will hate women for the rest of my life." Maxwell's eyes were full of resentment. He roared at Kiran angrily as if he were going to tear him to pieces. Kiran was even more happy to see him so angry. He knew that his guess was right, so he rolled his eyes and smiled. "I know now. You like Fiona, but she doesn't like you back. Then, you proceeded to have feelings for my mother, but she married my father. So, both of the women you liked ended up with my father instead? Is that it?" You bastard! Maxwell felt like his old wounds were being ripped open by brute force. Then he shouted angrily and swung his fist at Kiran. Chapter 417. Maxwell got up, and as the wind blew, his intent to kill surged. Maxwell unleashed all his fury, swinging his fist to attack Kiran. Kiran was extremely calm in the face of his attack. He quietly and fearlessly stood there, ignoring him. Maxwell was enraged to see him this calm, as if he was mocking him, and that fueled his desire to kill him. However, he did not let himself get carried away. The moment he was about to attack, he released more black magic. He still did not believe that Kiran was immune to it. He had developed his black magic for many years, and it had never failed him. He was absolutely confident that if it could kill an Imperial Dragon Master, it could kill Kiran. Kiran remained unflinching, but his gaze was fixated on the poison. When another whiff of poison appeared, the centipedes, scorpions, and snakes that had previously come out began to flee in fear, which was a testament to how powerful that poison was. Unfortunately, they did not manage to escape. They were swiftly eliminated and even devoured by the new poison. Kiran smirked and inhaled through his mouth. Suddenly, the foul smell made his stomach turn, and he felt like vomiting. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling, as if about to burst out of his body. Maxwell burst into laughter. Kiran, I didn't think you were stupid enough to inhale the poison. Ha ha ha. Your insides will soon be filled with poison, and you will die. Kiran felt many creepy crawlies in his stomach, but he was not afraid. He just held his stomach and pretended to look angry. Then he ran away. Maxwell did not know he was putting on an act. He thought Kiran was actually afraid after being poisoned. You want to run? In your dreams. Maxwell immediately chased after him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Kiran turned around and shot 3 needles at him. Maxwell was able to dodge the first 2 needles by swaying left and right, but the 3rd needle pierced his chest's pressure point. Maxwell's body inflated like a balloon and immediately deflated right after. He went weak all of a sudden and plopped to the ground. Kiran did not return to kill him, but he ran out. After leaving, he stopped resisting the poison in his stomach and allowed it to wreak havoc while he rushed to Neptune's Cove. As soon as he arrived, Lauren was shocked to see his face turning blue while black blood spilled from the corner of his mouth as if he were poisoned. Stay away from me. I've been poisoned. Kiran ran upstairs while speaking. He was running fast, but his eyes were gleaming as he was looking forward to seeing Lilian's reaction. Lilian was playing the joyful Odyssey on the harp, but it sounded sad. When she heard Kiran's footsteps, she immediately stopped. Kiran opened the door and walked in. Lilian, I'm dying. Saying that, he fell onto the sofa in Lilian's room. His body was twitching and shaking violently as blood spilled from his mouth. Meanwhile, Lilian sat in front of the harp without moving, but her face darkened. Kiran was lying on the sofa, peeking at Lilian from the corner of his eyes. When he saw her this calm, he was confused. What was she doing? Why was she not moving at all? Did she know he was faking it? That could not be. Kiran's mind was running wild as he pretended to convulse in pain as if he was going to die any second now. However, Lilian still did not move. After 5 whole minutes, Kiran decided that this woman simply did not care. He cursed in his heart. She was nothing like his wife. If Snow saw him, she would definitely check on him. He was embarrassed that his acting had failed. Acting like this was out of character for him. His proud nature preferred a more straightforward approach of killing and controlling the lives of others. However, Lilian was built differently. He was shocked by her unusual tactics, so he pretended to be poisoned to test the love spell. Too bad. She remained unmoved like a stone head. Kiran was torn. He had already sacrificed his dignity by coming here to act. If he did not succeed, it would be truly humiliating. He could not embarrass himself and turn himself into a joke. After giving it some thought, Kiran continued to lie on the sofa and pretend to be poisoned. He even started to vomit, filling up the room with a foul smell. Lilian, who had been sitting still the whole time, suddenly stood up and looked at Lauren at the door. I'll have grits for breakfast. Go bring me some. Lauren was stunned. Lilian never liked grits. What was she doing? However, she dared not say anything, so she went to get what she asked for. Kiran's heart skipped a beat. She was up to no good, but he had come too far to quit, so he pretended not to hear. Lauren quickly brought grits for Lilian. She took them and signaled for Lauren to leave and close the door behind her. Then Lilian threw the uncooked grits on the ground in front of the wardrobe. Kiran, I'll help you get rid of the poison if you kneel. When Kiran heard that, his mind went numb, and he was filled with anger. Was she a psychopath? How could she make him kneel on grits to get rid of the poison? He pretended not to hear, tossing and turning on the sofa. Did you not hear me? Lilian smirked sinisterly as she got up. She walked over to him and pulled him up. "I'll teach you a lesson then." Kiran wanted to get up, but he felt his energy depleting. He was reminded of Lilian's tactic yesterday, so he panicked. "Lilian, let me go!" As if she did not hear him, she threw him onto the grits. Kiran was miserable and in excruciating pain, but even after struggling, he failed to stand up. He was furious. "Lilian, I'm not poisoned. Let me go." Lilian did not speak. Instead, she opened the wardrobe in front of her. Kiran looked at it in shock, and tears started to well up in his eyes. Inside the wardrobe was a photo of a beautiful woman. The woman in the photo looked young and beautiful, but her beauty was indescribable. As beautiful as Lilian and Snow were, both of their beauty combined still would not surpass the beauty of the woman in the photo. What shocked Kiran most was that he had her looks. He instantly realized she was his mother, Zara. Kiran felt his heart boiling. Just as he was about to speak, Lilian slapped him on the back. Chapter 418. Slap! The crisp sound of a palm hitting his back sounded, and Kiran almost fell to the ground. "Knees, grits," Lilian ordered fiercely. Kiran's heart was in intense pain and anger. However, the portrait of his mother and the fact that Lilian enshrined it here overwhelmed his emotions, and tears gushed from his eyes. "Mom!" "Slap, slap!" When Lilian heard him call her mom, she got even angrier, so she slapped him in the back again. "You're not allowed to cry!" Kiran had mixed emotions after her beating, so he looked at her. Tears were streaming down her face too, but she looked at him with a warning gaze. "I said don't cry." Kiran stopped crying. Bam, bam, bam. Lilian gave him another round of violent beatings. It hurt more this time, but Kiran did not scream or cry. Instead, he was extremely calm. "Kiran, do you know why I hit you?" she asked. Kiran did not speak, but he could feel his insides churning. He knew Lilian did it for him and the York family. He wanted to get up. Boom. Lilian kicked him on the inside of his knee, and he plopped onto the grits again. "Kiran, when you first learned about the family feud, you were acting impulsively like you were some devil or god. That was idiotic. Now that you know that you're under the love spell, you're impatient to find out more. That's foolish behavior. Men shouldn't be impulsive like that. Use your head and think. You should know what you're up against." Bam, bam, bam. Lilian got angrier as she spoke, so she slapped Kiran's back several more times. Kiran did not dodge it, but he seemed to have come to a realization. Lilian's words enlightened him. After what he had gone through, he knew that the York family's feud was not as simple as he thought. It was a puzzle. Lilian had known about it for so long. Of course, she would have investigated it. She was in charge of Foxgate, so she was able to get information easily. Perhaps she was able to remain calm and not take action because of what she knew. Kiran's head was spinning at that point. The more he thought about it, the calmer he got. Then he turned to Lilian. "I know now." He was about to stand up. "Kneel," Lilian growled. "I have something to do." Kiran still wanted to get up. "Today is your mother's death anniversary. Shouldn't you be kneeling?" Lilian choked back her tears. Kiran's head was throbbing. He looked at Lilian and realized she was wearing pure white clothes today. "Today?" Kiran asked, tearing up. "Yes, your mother died 10 years ago today." Lilian kneeled beside Kiran and looked at the smiling portrait of their mum. "How did she die?" Kiran asked as tears streamed down his face. "When the York family was in danger, she tried her best to save them. Imperial Dragon did not know that her true identity was Zara at the time, so they teamed up to kill your mother. Your mother was seriously injured in battle. She wanted to accompany your father, but because she was worried about your safety, she escaped and changed her identity back to Zara. So, she managed to survive without being discovered. Then, what happened?" Kiran felt as if millions of needles were pricking his heart. "Later, while she was recovering from her injuries, she wanted to find out how you were doing. Upon learning that you had been rescued, she was relieved. After that, she plotted to kill the enemies, but they were too strong for her. Her old wounds and her longing for your father caused her to fall sick and into a coma. Eventually, she passed away from depression." Lilian covered her face with her hands and cried. Crack! The grits on the ground turned into powder, cracking even the floor tiles. The fragments of it pierced the skin on his knee, but he did not feel a thing. Bam, bam. Kiran slapped himself twice, causing blood to flow from the corners of his mouth. "I'm sorry, Mom. I let you down." Thud, thud, thud. Kiran faced his mother's portrait and kowtowed 3 times, and Lilian followed suit. Their movements were synchronized. They almost looked like a married couple. Kiran did not think much about it, but Lilian's face turned red in embarrassment. "Thank you." Kiran said to her with sincerity. I don't need to hear those words from you. If you're a real man, show courage and strength instead of fighting and killing every day. If fighting and killing were the way to solve your problems, why isn't your master helping you when he must be stronger than you? Lilian paused and continued. If that alone were enough to get revenge, I would have done so long ago. Kiran was silent. It's no use breaking off the branches and leaves of the tree. No matter how many you break, they're still just branches and leaves. You have to get to the root of it. Both Imperial Dragon and Power Hub are forces to be reckoned with. Why else would your mother hide her true appearance from your father? Also, don't you think it's a bit sudden that the York family vanished overnight? Your mother lived for 10 more years, and even if she was injured, she only managed to kill a few enemies from Imperial Dragon. She couldn't even make it to Power Hub. There must be a reason why she hesitated. There must be problems she can't solve. Lilian turned to look at Kiran and reached out to touch his head. Don't Tom playing little tricks on me. I don't want to hurt you. I just want you to wake up. Kiran looked at Lilian in her pure white dress. She looked like the goddess of purity. Her grace, elegance, and ethereal beauty surpassed all others. Her fair arms cradled his head, and the fierceness in him was replaced by tender and infinite love. Her otherworldly aura and goddess-like beauty were untouchable. She was as gentle as water and as beautiful as a painting. She was his closest family, and she loved him like a wife. You can call me sister from now on. Lilian looked at Kiran, who was in a daze. Kiran knew that Lilian was in pain, but he was in pain too. Even under the love spell, he loved Snow. Sis, Kiran shouted. Lilian nodded, but it felt like knives to her heart. In front of their mother, they finally went their separate ways. From that point on, they were just brother and sister. I won't let you down, Kiran said before he left. At that moment, his spine was as straight as ever. He knew his responsibility, and he finally understood maturity. Kiran had decided to face the York family feud calmly. However, he had lost his goddess-like fiancée. Love requires fate, courage, and commitment. Chapter 419. When Kiran returned to Xander Corporation, the company was already in full swing. Onyx and the others were posing as security guards. When they saw Kiran return, they were all respectful, as they already considered themselves as members of the York family. Kiran's expression looked twisted. He was still heartbroken, coming from his mother's death anniversary. When he went upstairs to Snow's office, no one was there. He briefly washed up and called Snow's secretary Rain. After a while, she picked up and whispered, "One moment, Kiran." Kiran frowned. Why was she whispering? Was she in a meeting? After that, Kiran hung up. He walked out of the office and quickly got to the 9th floor, where the conference room was, and he saw Rain standing by the door. He noticed that she was in office attire while she stood at the door waiting for him. Kiran! Rain caught sight of Kiran looking at her, so she hurried over, her face lit up with a smile. Her gracefully arched eyebrows were naturally delicate, and her bright, beautiful eyes sparkled with excitement and intelligence. Kiran was grateful to Margaret for raising her, which made him appreciate his honest and upright younger sister even more. Kiran, Snow is having a meeting inside. I see. Kiran's gaze fell upon Rain's delicate and radiant face that resembled a full moon. Her bright, watery eyes were adorable and lively, giving off a sense of innocence and naivety. Kiran's heart was filled with affection for the girl whom he treated like a younger sister. He remembered how Rain expressed her desire to work at Bayville University, but she kept postponing it. He helped her brush away a few stray hairs and said, Rain, don't go to Bayville University to work. Rain was stunned. She did not expect him to remember. I've been so busy lately that I haven't had the chance to discuss it with you, Kiran said while he stared at Rain's radiant, plump cheeks. I'll listen to whatever you say. Rain's lips were as tender and red as freshly picked cherries, and they looked alluring as she spoke. There are many things we need to do to rebuild the York family, and it's going to take a lot of manpower. Can you stay and help me? Kiran said again. Hearing that made Rain's face light up with joy, and she firmly nodded. She was so happy that her radiant face bloomed like a flower. She simply looked like an angel. Kiran started to like his sister even more. Since you studied business management, when I open up my hospital, you will help me manage it. You're opening up a hospital? Rain was surprised. Kiran nodded. Yes, I'm trying to promote Western medicine. Rain pointed toward the conference room. Snow is talking about that right now, but we haven't found a suitable entry point yet. When Kiran heard that, a joyful smile appeared on his face. He was falling more and more in love with his wife. She truly was a smart and efficient woman. Other than the little girl in front of him, everyone perceived Snow as a cold and aloof goddess. In Kiran's eyes, she was the best. She was even better than Lilian. He wanted a wife to spend the rest of his life with, not just a pretty face. Thinking about that, Kiran could not help but curse. "All right!" He patted Rain's shoulder and said, "Get it done." Rain nodded firmly and said happily, "Consider it done." Kiran smiled and went into the room. When Kiran entered, Snow was sitting in the chairman's seat. She was wearing sexy office wear, and she had a stern look on her angelic face. She had the perfect combination of the face of an angel and the body of a devil. Kiran had to admit that his wife's feminine charm was so overpowering at that moment that she could conquer his soul in an instant. Seeing his sweet wife being all cold to the outside world made him feel like his life was perfect. Snow was taken aback by his sudden appearance, not to mention his loving gaze. She recalled her declaration that she would give birth to his child this morning, and her cheeks turned red. The people in the conference room looked at him respectfully, but they were secretly smiling while peeking at Kiran and Snow back and forth, wondering what kind of affection they were going to display this time. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not here to display my love for my wife. I'm here for the meeting," Kiran said. "Theft!" There was a burst of laughter in the conference room, followed by a loud applause. "Welcome, Mr. Kiran." Snow did not think that Kiran would make such a statement. Although she was happy, she still pouted to express her annoyance toward him. The happiness and love between the two brought a sense of peace and joy to the people around them. "I'm actually a henpecked husband at home," Kiran said with a smile as he walked over. "Are you forced to kneel? Does she drip wax on you? Does she tie you up?" Everyone's imaginations ran wild, and they began to ask jokingly. They were having a serious meeting, but because of Kiran's joke, they were less tense. "I didn't do any of that," Snow immediately said. Everyone sat up straight and looked at Snow. "I castrated Kiran," Snow said while blushing. Her devilish body could not help but tremble. "Ha ha ha." Everyone laughed again. Kiran did not expect Snow to be so cute and humorous. Seeing as the atmosphere was not as tense anymore, he walked behind her and hugged her gently. "No one is going to believe you." Instead of pushing him away, Snow enjoyed it. "They're doing it again!" Someone booed. Snow's cheeks were flushed. Kiran smirked at everyone. "We're done now, so let's get down to business." Everyone immediately sat upright and looked at him. Snow did the same. She preferred Kiran to be the one making the decisions and managing Xander Corporation. She just wanted to be his woman when she was around him. Kiran was pleased to see everyone's attitude. He cleared his throat and stood up straight, saying, "To prevent your CEO from castrating me, I have decided." Chapter 420. Kiran paused. Gasp! Everyone waited for Kiran to speak like they had something stuck in their throat. Their eyes were filled with anxiousness, and they were already shivering before they even heard the second half of the sentence. Snow looked up at Kiran while his gaze fell upon her delicate neck and beautiful face that was as fair as ivory. Her skin was so smooth that it seemed like even a gentle blow would scratch it. She stayed with him at the office the entire night, so she did not have any makeup on. She only put on a light layer of powder so her blushing cheeks were extra prominent. Under the light, her red lipstick was glowing. Staring at him, she wanted to speak, but she hesitated. The movement of her lips made them look extra kissable. "Kiran, will you kiss her?" Someone shouted boldly. "Kiss!" The others immediately followed suit and chanted. Snow immediately sat up with a reddened face. "It's not that I don't want to kiss her, but we're separating," Kiran suddenly said with a bitter look on his face. "Separating?" Snow bolted up as if electrocuted. Her face was full of shock and anger, and so was everyone else. They all looked at Kiran, trying to understand what he meant. Kiran just nodded. "Yes, we're separating." "What are you doing?" Snow thought that Kiran was leaving her because of the love spell, so she subconsciously tugged at Kiran's arm, afraid that he would leave her. Kiran was glad to see how much she cared, so he kissed her earlobe. Snow was stunned, and she almost exclaimed. "I'm going to open up a hospital, so I'm going to have to work alone," Kiran said with a smile. "You." When Snow heard Kiran's plan, she realized that he was messing with her again. She was mad that she got afraid and worried for nothing. Kiran looked at everyone and said, "What do you think?" "Ha ha." Everyone burst out laughing. Snow's cheeks were slightly red, but she was filled with happiness. Men should have their own careers. Kiran wanted to enter the medical industry to fulfill his dreams and put his expertise to good use. Most importantly, he was no longer fighting and killing people, which made Snow feel much more at ease. "I heard from Rain that you're discussing the future development of the company. Well, the solution is easy." Kiran paused before continuing. "The next step of Xander Corporation would be to manufacture medicine according to my instructions. My hospital will use the medicine you produce, and we will move forward with an in-house production and distribution." Everyone was over the moon when they heard that, and their eyes lit up. However, Snow looked at Kiran and said, thoughtfully, "How much are you going to need? A big company like Xander Corporation can't just work for one hospital." Kiran blinked at her and joked, "You women have flat stomachs before giving birth, but you can still produce a whole baby during pregnancy." "Fuck you." Snow did not expect Kiran to use such a metaphor. She looked humiliated and ready to tackle him. "Kiran, why don't you give her twins?" someone teased. "You bitch," Snow cursed at the woman speaking. "Ha ha." Everyone laughed. Kiran took the opportunity to wave his hands and signal everyone to be quiet. "I understand your CEO's concerns, and I know what you're thinking. It may seem like a simple model, but this is the fundamental basis for the future development of both Xander Corporation and my hospital." Kiran started walking around the room. "While you were on vacation, Xander Corporation was just an empty shell of a building." Everyone nodded in agreement. "Although Xander Corporation and my hospital were empty shells a few days ago, they came alive again after your return." Kiran paused. "I'm aiming to pioneer a form of medicine that will make history. That's why we need to embrace the simplicity and endure the setbacks at the beginning." He looked at Snow and said, "Tell the employees that there won't be much increase in salary for a while, but they can look forward to it in the future. It's up to them whether they want to stay." Everyone in the conference room fell silent, lost in thought. Rain looked at Kiran. "Kiran, are you building your own brand and following the York family's path?" Her single sentence sounded like a wake-up call to everyone, and they turned to look at Kiran. Kiran nodded sternly. "That's right." His gaze was deep. "Not only am I rebuilding the York family, but I'm also building a platform where I can use my medical skills to contribute to society." Everyone fell silent. Kiran looked at Snow and said, "Xander Corporation is my biggest backer." Snow was moved. She nodded enthusiastically and said, "Don't worry, we'll always have your back." Kiran was equally as moved, but he still said to them, "Go and tell your employees that only those who believe in me and the York family can stay. Those who are looking to make quick money should leave." Everyone was silent. Kiran excused himself and left. It was his mother's death anniversary, and it was also the day the York family officially set sail. After coming out, he looked at Onyx and asked him to contact the previous construction vehicles and go to Dragon's Mount immediately. Onyx immediately contacted them without a second thought. Meanwhile, Kiran called Starly. "Kiran, do you miss me?" Starly answered instantly, almost shouting as soon as the call went through. She sounded like she wanted to throw herself into his arms and give herself to him. "Go to Dragon's Mount now. I'll give you 100,000 to do a live broadcast," said Kiran. "Kiran, I don't need the money. I'll do anything for you. I think I'm in love with you." Starly choked. Kiran did not expect her to confess all of a sudden. He rolled her eyes and said, "You must get to Dragon's Mount within half an hour." He hung up and went back upstairs. Snow had just adjourned the meeting and returned to the office. Seeing Kiran come back, she asked curiously, "Where have you been?" "Do you have a red dress?" Kiran asked. Snow was stunned, and her cheeks turned red. Was he having dirty thoughts? There was no way. He could not even sleep with her. "I think so." "Why?" Snow shook off her thoughts and replied. Kiran had already opened her wardrobe. She did have one, so he took it out and said to her, "Change into this. Let's go have a foundation stone laying ceremony." "Foundation stone laying ceremony?" Snow took the dress in confusion. He saw him take his clothes off and take a shower. She did not know what was going on, but she quickly changed into the dress. 15 minutes later, the two of them were dressed. Snow saw Kiran in a dashing white suit, and then she looked at her red dress. She laughed. "It feels like our wedding." Kiran kissed her forehead. "It could be anything as long as I have you." Snow was touched. She hugged him and gave him a passionate kiss. Then Kiran took her to Dragon's Mount. Many people in Bayville were confused by the hundreds of construction vehicles driving toward Dragon's Mount, as if they were going to knock it down. When Lilian got the news, she was so shocked that she hurried over too.